Welcome to the Misophonia Podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 14. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This week, I'm excited to share my conversation with Dorian. Some of you may be familiar with Dorian after she posted a beautiful, raw Instagram story where she talked about her misophonia publicly for the first time. It got a great reaction and hopefully inspired others to speak out and share their experiences. I immediately wanted to get her on the show, and we were able to finally chat a couple months ago. I'll also have her Instagram in the show notes if you want to give her a follow. A couple quick notes, just a reminder that the Misophonia Association Convention is happening this year online on October 8th. They've posted more speakers on their website, so please check it out and register if you want to hear some great talks about the latest research, treatment, community building, and coping advice. I'll be talking about this podcast and the community that's been building around it. Link in the show notes, or just Google Misophonia Association. And one last thing, I want to give a shout out to 621-311 Apparel, a new clothing line co-founded by Kristen, back from episode 5 of season 1. Everything available on the site features anti-racist messaging to let people express themselves through their apparel. You can find a link to the shop in the show notes or on misolist.com. And remember, if you're at a business owned by a misophone or employs misophones, please let me know. You can go to misolist.com and click the add button. And this is one way we can all help support each other. All right, now here's my conversation with Dorian. Dorian, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So, as people know, I usually like to just kind of hear kind of where you're located and kind of what you do.
So right now I'm living in San Diego, California. We're actually getting ready to move back to St. Petersburg, Florida, which we were living like a year ago.
Yeah.
So things are wild because we're going to be moving in July, and we don't know what's going to be going on with the virus at that point. So move will be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting on many points. And I was kind of first made aware of you by the Instagram story, the series of Instagram stories or posts that you made about misophonia, which was awesome. It was like raw. It was about your personal experience, and I think a lot of people noticed. Maybe do you want to kind of start with kind of what made you want to do that?
Yeah. So oddly enough, I found you.
Okay.
And I got super inspired by, you talking to people and having them open up about it. And I thought that was really fun. And I was like, you know what? I kind of want to, share my experience because there's a lot of people that I know and that follow me and in my personal life that don't know because I don't bring it up unless there's a reason to normally. So I don't know, I was very inspired. And so I just put on my camera and was like, okay, go. And I didn't edit it at all and started crying here and there. And it was really funny, but yeah.
That was perfect. Yeah, that was great. And I think a lot of people noticed it and I'm sure were inspired too. It was a while because I don't remember everything you mentioned in it, but do you want to maybe go back to kind of early days for Dorian and where this kind of started?
Oh man. Okay. Yeah. So originally I'm from Louisiana. So my mom and I moved out to Atlanta, Georgia when I was 10. And then we left, my grandpa was still living there. And then a couple of my other family members were still living there. But then one Thanksgiving after we had moved, my grandpa passed away on Thanksgiving. And we found out about it because my brother was still living in Louisiana and he found out about it. My grandpa's neighbor had found him because in Louisiana, no one locks their doors. So he just went inside because he didn't notice my grandpa out. And yeah. So we went down to Louisiana. Everything was good. Well, for going to a funeral. And then no misophonia. I actually bought a pack of gum on the day of his funeral and passed out gum to my entire row. So it makes me wonder, because that was my first trigger, but I wasn't triggered at the funeral. And then I got back from Thanksgiving break, my first day back at school. I remember I walked into a math classroom, which is my least favorite subject. I'm not very good at math. I sat down at my desk, everything was still fine. And all of a sudden, she passes out this pop quiz, like first day back from Thanksgiving break. And I'm like, whoa, like I was not expecting that. And then the guy next to me started chewing gum, and I noticed it like immediately. And it it kind of feels like the Twilight series, like how Edward describes his vampire hearing is like supersonic and it's like really abrupt and like you can hear everything and like
Yeah.
that's kind of how it felt for me. Like out of nowhere, super loud, like the volume got turned up on the earth and like it was awful. That was the worst.
And what age was that again?
11.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, this is not the first, you're not the first person I've interviewed actually, who can associate the beginning of their misophonia with a passing of a grandparent. There was
Hmm.
that's interesting. I mean, yeah, I guess yeah, a lot of stress factors involved around that time for you.
Yeah. It yeah, I mean like my grandpa passed and then the math test, it was a lot of stress like all at once for my little 11-year-old body and it
And
was over.
that age, yeah, that age, anyways. And so, okay, so then you go home, and I know maybe not that day necessarily, but
Right.
from that point on, did you start noticing it in other places? Sounds
Oh
like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
From that point on, I don't remember what happened that day or anything, but I couldn't eat at the dinner table with my mom anymore.
So it was like
And
night and day, pretty much.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And back then, my mom was working a lot of night shifts anyway. So we never really had to eat dinner together.
Hmm.
Because, I would normally just feed myself and then, that was kind of it. But any time where like we went out to eat or anything, oh, it was torture because I had no idea um, that earplugs existed.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like had no idea. And then so in school, it was torture because kids were constantly chewing gum. And then I started having visual triggers pretty soon after with pencils and like tapping. And like if they were like twiddling like their pencil or if they were like shaking their leg or their foot,
Yeah.
it was almost at the same time that it started up.
Wow. So everything just started to hit all at once. Like all the
Yeah.
usual triggers came kind of at once. And
Yeah.
how did you, this must have been overwhelming. How did you start to react, at home and at school?
So at school, I had pretty long hair at the time. So I would like, kind of cover my face, like head down to my desk, unless I had to look up at the teacher for some reason. So I wasn't learning very much back then, like, because I was constantly worried about seeing a trigger or hearing a trigger. And then it was so bad. We used to have quiet reading time in literature class and I loved to read. Like that wasn't the problem. The problem was I knew it was going to be super quiet in there, and people were going to make noises, and we were sat together in a group of 5 at the time, and so we had quiet reading, group of 5 people at my table, and I remember not being able to focus at all because they would take out their candy and their
Yeah.
lollipops and the teachers wouldn't say anything. I'm like, we're not supposed to be eating in class, but they're like taking them out, and I guess it's quiet enough where the teachers couldn't hear the rappers, but like I could hear the rappers,
Yeah.
because I'm like focused in on it. And then it would I would take my palms and like squeeze them on the side of my head like as hard as I could, and like it would hurt and I would cry. And my teachers would be like, why are you crying? And like I couldn't explain it because I didn't know what was happening myself. I
What
just
did,
thought I just thought that I was annoying. Like I thought I was being too critical and that, the people that were like making these noises, I thought that I had like a personal issue with them. And
uh,
I didn't realize that it was because of the noises they would make. I didn't realize. And so I thought I just hated that person and I couldn't explain to my teacher, oh, well, I hate her, so
yeah. Did any of your teachers kind of like put two and two together and just realize that, hey, maybe you're being heavily distracted by sounds for some reason? Maybe
no.
I should move you. Oh, okay. Mm.
No. So I ended up catching on like later, in later years, where I would make sure to sit like in the back corner of the classroom, and then at least one of my ears would be free. You know, like I would have one ear that wasn't being bothered by any noise, and then my other ear would just have to suffer a little bit, but at least I could still participate.
Yeah.
Because the schools that I went to, the teachers always allowed us to pick our seats on the first day, and I would just bolt to like the corner,
Yeah.
and just like, this is my seat, like no one can sit here.
Right. And what about at home? How did you? Yeah, how were you dealing with it there?
uh, I would just stay in my room,
Hmm.
and then at home I would listen to music on my headphones, and same thing on the bus, because riding the bus like as a kid, it's super noisy. Like they're making so many noises like on purpose to distract the bus driver, which, oh,
Oh
praise
yeah.
to them, I could not do that job. Like as a misophonic at all, like I could not be a bus driver. I would crash for sure. um but yeah, at home I just stayed in my room, or I went outside, or I took walks, like just anywhere where I could be alone. And oh man, my family just thought I was evil. Like they really thought that I was going through this puberty mood
Hmm.
swing, and that I didn't like my family. I was rebellious and hated my family like teenagers do. And I was like, not at all. Like I love you guys a lot. I just don't understand why. And for a while I thought that I did hate them, because like I said, I didn't know that that was the association. And
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that I did. I thought, wow, okay, yeah, I must just have a really bad case of rebellious teenager.
Teenageritis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you? So I guess then when did you? I guess was it when you found out it had a name and you read about it that you realized, oh my gosh, the light bulb turned on for you, or
So when I was in high school, I realized I could buy earplugs, because I don't even know where I found that out or like how I thought of it, but I think my mom and I were just shopping at Walmart or something, and we happened to pass by the nude earplugs, and I was like, wait a second,
I could
let
shove
me
these in
just
my ears.
try
Like,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, like let me try it, because it's for sleeping and, like barking
right.
dogs and stuff. And I was like, well, maybe it'll at least like tone it down. And I put them in, and at first I wasn't using them at school because I thought that I wouldn't be able to hear the teacher. But I tried it one day, and all I could hear was the teacher, and I was like, this is it. I was like, this is
Yeah.
what's gonna save me. And I would never go to school without earplugs, except the couple times that I happened to, I guess, leave them in my pockets or something. I'm not proud of this, but I would go to the bathroom and wad up toilet paper, wet them, and then shove them in my ears because
Hey,
I was that stressed out.
you got to do what you got to do. I haven't
And
heard that,
yeah,
but that makes total sense.
I mean,
Um,
I just had to think of anything.
yeah.
Yeah.
What did your teachers think? Did they notice that you had earplugs in your ear, and did they care or
So funny enough, because my hair was so long, they never noticed.
perfect?
And I became like super stealth at putting them in. Like
Yeah.
no one ever noticed that I put them in, and the only person that knew that I had them at all was my best friend, which she was super awesome because she understood the issue, and and she would tell me like, it's not your fault, like you can't control like why you're feeling that way. And so she kind of made me realize that it's not that I hated people, it's that I hated the sound. And not even so much that I hated it, I just couldn't tolerate it like everyone else could.
So
So
she was able to kind of like help you out there even before you knew what Miss Funny
yeah,
was. Yeah.
yeah.
So and how did that's great that you had that friend. What about other friends? How was it like making friends and keeping friends?
So I would never tell anyone unless they were chewing gum, and then I would be like, oh hey, I have like this thing, and um usually it would work. Or they would just say, oh, I'll just chew quieter, and I'm like, oh, that's not the point.
No. Yeah.
I think it's so funny when people say that, because I'm like, no, like I need it just out of your mouth. Like
Yeah.
it's um so there were, you know a lot of times my best friend, because we were like attached to the hip during high school, she would say that she had the issue with the triggers, like if we were around it, um, which was awesome because I felt so self-conscious about it, like so bad. Like I didn't want anyone to know I had earplugs or had an issue or was weird or different.
Yeah.
And so she'd be the one that would tell them like, hey, chewing gum, like really bothers me. Like, do you mind if you just spit it out? And they would, and it would be fine. And so from her doing that and me watching her do that multiple times, I started feeling like I could do it too and like tell people. And then the last why. And without having a name for it, it's kind of hard to explain. So I'd be like, oh, it just bothers me, like it's just like really loud and it's just bothersome. And then trying to think, oh, there was this one girl who I encountered, which I still remember because it was like traumatizing, who pretty much laughed at me and just kept going. And she was like in our friend group, and I was like, no, I guess I won't be able to hang out with you. um, but that was like the first time, I guess, that someone had an issue with me asking them, and I felt like it was weird. I was like, well, it's not, not asking you to do anything crazy, but
Yeah. So other than that one, there wasn't too much like bullying or anything going on.
no.
Were
I
there
mean, I
people
guess
were people like kind of like mocking it by, making the
like
sounds
doing it.
more?
Well, in middle school, before I even found out like earplugs or anything, I had this one class where visual triggers were like a big thing for me, because they had like the desks that have the bottoms where you could like hold your books,
Oh yeah.
but my classmates would like put their feet on them and then like shake them up and down, and then this one girl saw that I had an issue with it, so she would find a way to sit behind me and do it to my desk. And not only was I getting like triggers left and right, but my desk would shake the entire class.
Yeah, that's not cool. What about your grades? Like as you started to get it, and then as you got the earplugs, did you notice your grades kind of move proportionally with your triggers?
So my math grades never got better. I think having my initial trigger in my math class, I was just like scared of math,
Yeah,
and it never got better. So I never had any sort of math class that had any sort of value during high school. I just took the ones that I could pass with, and that was kind of it. But I excelled in everything else because I could pay attention. Like my science classes, my literature classes, I did great in. So yeah.
gotcha. Okay, so then you got out of high school then. Did you go to college afterwards?
So I went to school briefly
Yeah.
because I was going to do cosmetology. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought about how hairdressers love gum, and so do clients. And that's not really a job where you can avoid it. Like you can't just tell someone to, it's a lot more sensitive,
Yeah.
like in that area. So I was like, it's probably not the best job for
And you're
me.
also holding sharp tools in your hand as
Yeah.
they're triggering you, so
I
not
was
good for
gonna say
anybody. So then,
that.
yeah, so then this is interesting. Yeah, I'm curious, like, if this kind of affects career choices. So
It absolutely does.
what did you end up doing?
So I became a bakery manager at this really awesome grocery store in Georgia, um, called the Fresh Market. It's a chain in the southeast. So was working there and didn't have any issues with triggers because I could put my earplugs in if there was anything going on. Like sometimes like the mixer will like make sloshy noises, and like that
Right.
would trigger me. Like so, but that was the only thing that
But you
ever,
get to eat a donut at the end, so that kind of makes things better.
yeah. So I ended up working my way up uh, the retail and became like an assistant store manager. And that was fun because I was able to kind of like control my situations a little better. Like, like if an employee was chewing gum, I'd be able to be like, hey, like we really can't chew gum um, working with food. And that was always like, it's true. And it's also a little saving grace at the end there. Um,
Oh, that's interesting.
and
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
great career for anything related to
Yeah.
making food. Requires you to be not eating or yeah, okay.
It has to be sanitary.
Mhm.
So we did do a lot of sampling, but it was never an issue because I had my earplugs and I couldn't really hear it, as loudly, so it wasn't affecting me as much. But then I ended up moving to Florida, same career, same job, and then met my fiance, who's a veterinarian, and we moved out to San Diego. Um, so I had to change my career because we didn't have stores out on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Um, and I found a particular job, which I won't name because things didn't end very well there,
Yeah.
because of my triggers. Um, so it was a warehouse bakery job where you had to scoop brownie batter, like you had to make the batter, but then you had to scoop brownie batter, like into molds and trays, for your whole shift, like so for 8 hours, and so they were metal scoopers and metal bowls, and
Mm.
it was clinking every single scoop, and each bowl probably had about, oh my god, got over 1,000 scoops, got maybe 3,000 each bowl, and we would do 8 bowls a day. And there was like eight people, like eight to 10 people that would be scooping in a room.
Wow. Okay. So,
Yeah.
and this was a recent separation
Yeah.
from the job. Is this one of the reasons why you're moving back?
No. So I ended up quitting that job because I expressed my, you know,
Yeah.
like how it was a really big problem for me. I mean, I would start crying in the middle of scooping, and I'd
Yeah.
be like, I can't do this, and I would have my headphones on full blast. I would listen to like metal music, which I've listened to before, but like not in my late years, right? So, I listened to metal music full blast, and I could still hear it.
Yeah, metal clinging it has frequencies that I think would go through most music,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Well, I was going to ask, were you able to, I've heard people mention ADA accommodations and whatnot. I'm guessing that
Yeah.
this was not an option here.
Yeah, I don't think so. Just because like it's a standalone place, it's not a chain, and it wasn't something that I thought about looking into. And I had already quit by the time I heard you talking to someone, about that and about having issues at work and how they went through different doctors and got, papers saying that they had a condition. And I was like, wow, that would have been so helpful like a couple of months ago when I was working there. Because, I would talk to, like upper people in HR, like and things like that there. And, they were accommodating in saying that we hear your issue, we understand it, but there's nothing we can really do. And I was like, okay,
Meaning
because
there's nothing really we can really do to make ourselves actually care about your condition, is probably
yeah,
what they're actually saying.
yeah. It was weird because, I would talk to some of my coworkers and be like, hey, is there a way that you can scoop a different way that maybe is less noisy? And they would do it for a little while, but then they get back in their rhythm and then it would just, continue. Um, and so I started looking for another job, because I realized like it wasn't going to change and it was getting worse. Like I was like coming home to my fiance, like crying about having to go to work the next day and like not knowing how I was going to be able to cope, and felt like I was in
Yeah.
a prison. Like, and I'm like, but you're not in a prison. You can quit and you can find another job and it's fine. Um, so I ended up finding another grocery store job, became, an assistant store manager there, and I'm still there currently. But we'll be having to quit in July, because his residency is up. We're going to move back to Florida, and I'm going to go back to the exact same job at the other grocery store that I had before.
Oh, nice. So they're
Yeah.
giving it back to you because
Hmm.
you're such a great employee. That's great. So for the record, you don't actually work for the Disney company, right?
I do
based
not.
on your Instagram. I'm like, oh, maybe
No,
she works for Disney. Maybe that's, okay, I should ask her if that's a good place to work for Miso, but okay.
no, I'm not sure. I guess it would depend on where you're located, like where what your job is, you know. I feel like if you would be like a princess or something, you're dealing with so many kids that are making so many mouth noises. I feel like that would be awful.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, like you wouldn't be able to stay in character.
right. Oh God, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I work from home, so if people saw the facial expressions I make on meetings, we couldn't be a character at Disney World, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Unless it's the Hulk. Um, so yeah, I mean, I love how you approached actually, or tried to approach your fellow employees by saying, can you do this a different way?
Hmm.
Um, are there, yeah, I mean, other than like, blasting metal music, are there other kind of coping mechanisms or gear that you have to kind of help you out?
Mimicking is a big
Yeah.
one.
Hmm.
Yeah. That one really helps me in situations. But then sometimes like the mimicking will get very passive aggressive. um,
Yeah.
like if it goes on for too long and you feel like you're kind of like angry at the sound instead of just like helping with with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it always, yeah, that's always an interesting one. But and at home, does your fiance trigger you too? Curious how
Um,
that relationship is so far.
yeah, he does trigger me. It's kind of always like at the beginnings when I meet someone, unless they're like chewing gum, they don't normally trigger me right away. It normally takes a little while, and so he and I have been together for like 2 years, and the triggers are definitely starting to come on. I don't have to wear earplugs when I eat around him though, which is a blessing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sometimes he'll like make one noise or like he'll scrape his teeth with the fork and I'll like look at him and he knows. Like
Yeah.
he like he knows to stop and be more careful. And he'll apologize even though he doesn't need to. And um,
I
like
would,
if yeah.
sorry, I was going to say, yeah, I would imagine, especially with the stress you've had lately at at this job, it's probably
Mhm.
worse when you're, coming
It
home
was.
stressed out, right? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely was. I was only there for like 3 months, thankfully. Um, so I didn't have to worry about it for too long. But yeah, it was really bad back then.
And what about your friends these days? Like not out of school, do you are you close to a lot of people and you tell them about this, or you kind of like if they're just gonna be acquaintances, you just don't go there.
So since we moved, I don't really have any friends out here. So the only people I really, talk with at all are my coworkers and my employees at work. Um, and a lot of them know about it, because I'll tell them about it. Like if I make a face, I want them to understand why I made that face, and I don't want them to think that I hate them or anything. Um, so I'll normally like tell them, or like, sometimes I have to count money, and if I'm counting money, I can't be distracted. And so if they're clicking their pin, I'm like, hey, would you stop clicking while I'm counting? I'm getting a little distracted. And I normally don't even have to tell them that I have misophonia in those instances. I just say it's a distraction, which is nice.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like if it requires like counting or doing any kind of work,
Mental work, yeah.
it's not. I mean, if it was just kind of like the the rage, like at least I can get my work done for a brief minute at a time. But no, it's just like total brain shutdown.
Yeah, like you cannot even focus. You don't even remember what you were doing
No,
even.
yeah. How's your what does your family think now as you're an adult? Like, have they kind of gotten used to it?
So my mom is super understanding about it now because after, Kelly Ripa came out and it was on TV, I showed her the documentary. I think it was on 2020. I showed her that and had her watch it, and like she's totally understands now. Like it's still like I can't eat around her that much just because like there's visual triggers as well as like sound triggers with it. Um, but when I do have to, I'll wear my earplugs and I try to not make it seem like a big deal. Like I try to control my face and I try to just look away, and because I don't want her to think that it's her fault because it's really not. And then my brothers are it's it's harder I think for them to understand it, but as long as I do my part, everything's good. Like if they're eating, I'm not going to be like, no, don't eat that. Like, I'll just do my part and walk away for a little while, or I'll put my earplugs in and we're good. Yeah.
And then like family gatherings and whatnot, like Christmas and Thanksgiving, you just kind of
Yeah.
maybe go to the kitchen, do the dishes early, or
Yeah.
just tough it through.
Well, if I'm eating, it's easier.
If you're eating at the same
So,
time, because then you can do some
mhm.
mimicking maybe, or just look away.
Yeah. So if I'm like focused on eating like my plate, I'm not focusing on anyone else. So it might be harder for me to hold a conversation while we're at the table. Um, because I'm trying not to focus on it. But, especially if someone's talking and eating at the same time, that's a bad one for me. But um, you know, usually family gatherings, I'll have my earplugs in the entire day,
Yeah,
honestly.
gotcha. And then
Yeah.
no one's like, "What the heck are you doing?" It's just it's just what you got to do.
Yeah, yeah, they understand. Yeah, they know I don't have a choice.
Yeah. And going back to like yeah, that 2020 documentary, so was that I don't know what year that was, but was that yeah, like how was it the first time you actually, started to hear about the research and the name misophonia?
Yeah, so the documentary wasn't even the first time I heard it, but it was the first time I saw that it was publicly advertised, like as a thing. Um, the first time I found out is because I would Google search like a couple times a year,
Yeah.
like my symptoms, like to see like if anyone else in the world had anything like it, and I kept coming up with tinnitus and all that, and I'm like, that's not quite it, close,
Do you
but
remember
like,
what search terms you put in there? Like can't
uh,
stand chewing or
yeah, like things like
stuff like
that. Like,
that. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, mainly chewing or like gum and just those kind of terms, like ear type things. Like I would
Mm-hmm.
search like ear pain.
Sensitive hearing and yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and then misophonia came up, and I was like, wait,
yeah.
what? Like someone coined it, like someone knows like what it is. And I read the definition and I was like, that is me, like spot on. So I've never been to a doctor to get diagnosed, but I for sure have it. Like,
Yeah, most people have not. And then
yeah,
I know I've mentioned to a doctor, and they're like, "Who diagnosed you?" I'm like, "I self-diagnosed,"
yeah.
and kind of sheepishly say that. But like I said before, I just if they can put it on my record, even if it's self-diagnosed, at least it's somewhere in the database, and maybe somebody will do some research and kind of use it somehow. Yeah, so you read about it online, and then yeah, immediately it clicked.
Hmm.
What did you start to find out about new coping mechanisms? Did it kind of like put you at ease for a little while? That's what it does to a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, I felt a lot better about it. And now I knew that if I ever had to bring it up in conversation, I had something to back me up, which was really relieving because I was like, yeah, I have this. Like, there's a name for it. And they'd be like, what's that? And I'd be like, just Google it. Like, literally, would tell them,
Yeah,
just Google it.
yeah,
Like, it's on there, because a lot of people would like look at me funny and not believe me. And I'm like, Google it. Like, it's laid out for you. And I was so happy to be able to share it with my mom so that way she didn't feel like it was a personal thing because for a long time she did.
and how did she respond to that?
She was happy about it. She was glad that there was a name for it. She was sad that I had it and doesn't really understand how I got it, but we're
Yeah, no one
happy
really
that
does.
it exists and
Yeah,
yeah.
and do you think so you said you don't have a lot of friends other than your coworkers. Do you think it's affected like how outgoing, and like how willing you are to make new friends?
Yeah, I feel
And
like
would you
that's
say you're
probably
kind of
how a lot of people.
introverted, maybe, or in general,
Yeah,
or
but at the same time, I know that I'm super introverted, but would I have been had I not had
yeah,
misophonia? I wonder about that all the time. Like, I got this at 11. Would I have been an extroverted kid? Would I have been like, like I probably would have been a totally different person. I mean, it really shapes you if you get it so young.
you're right. Yeah, no, I can imagine you're very kind of pliable I don't know if that's not the right word, but at that
Yeah.
age.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, a lot of experiences there. Well, that's interesting. Well, I guess maybe we should start to wrap it up soon. But is there any? I know you kind of like were very eloquent in your Instagram story. Is there kind of anything you kind of want to tell people about maybe they are just finding out for the first time, maybe they're just struggling with telling family members or friends, or they're still in school. Anything you want to maybe share with people?
I'm still um, figuring myself out with it as well, but it's part of us now. Like there's no cure, it's not going anywhere. There's ways to cope with it, but we kind of just have to embrace it as part of us and own it. I mean, there's so many other people in the world. No one's perfect. Everyone's got something going on with them, and this just happens to be ours. And how how we deal with it and how we live with it is who we are at this point. So I I really like the idea of just embracing it now, and just using ourselves to teach others about it.
Yeah, I think the biggest kind of the times when it's like gone down the most for me is just kind of talking about it with other people and just kind of
Hmm.
hearing stories one on one, as opposed to maybe like the big rant groups online, which are could be useful in their own way. But yeah, it helps to talk to other people and kind of like connect, and so we can hopefully figure ourselves out. Because yeah, like you said, there's no cure, and I'm not holding my breath, at least in my lifetime.
Yeah, I think that if we just talk about it more, share more about it, more people will find out about it, which means more people will research it. And the closer we are to figuring out how it works, why we got it, and how we can deal with it better.
Cool. Well, thank you, Dorian. Thanks. It's great to finally talk to you in person, so to
Yes.
speak. And yeah, thanks for sharing your story. Yeah, online too, and here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dorian. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. You can email hello@misophoniapodcast.com, or find us on Instagram and Facebook at Misophonia Podcast, or Twitter at Misophonia Show. Don't forget to check out the Miso List at misolist.com. Music, as always, is by Moby. And again, wishing you peace and quiet.